The moment Daniel Carter saw the wheelchair at the cafe entrance, he realized his blind date had been hiding something from him. But instead of walking away, staring or pretending not to notice, the single father did one small thing that made the woman stop in the doorway and fight back tears. Daniel stood up, removed the empty chair across from him, and placed it against the wall. Then he looked at her and smiled. "I thought you might want the space," he said. "This table is yours." For a few seconds, the woman did not move. Her name was Claire Bennett. She was 33, with soft brown eyes, dark hair tied behind her head, and both hands resting tightly on the wheels of her chair. She looked prepared for disappointment. Daniel recognized that look. It was the same expression his 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, wore whenever she tried not to hope for too much. Claire slowly rolled toward the table. "You're not surprised?" she asked. Daniel gave an honest answer. "I am surprised," he said, "but only because you never mentioned it." Claire lowered her eyes. "I was afraid you would cancel." Daniel sat down across from her. "I almost canceled anyway," admitted. That made her look up. Daniel smiled nervously. "Not because of the wheelchair, because I haven't been on a date in 7 years. For the first time, Claire laughed. It was quiet but real. 7 years earlier, Daniel's wife Emma had died after a sudden illness. Their son Noah had been only 2. Sophie had been 4 and old enough to understand that her mother had gone away, but too young to understand why she was never coming back since then. Daniel had built his whole life around being a father. He woke up before sunrise each morning, packed lunches, found missing shoes, signed school papers, and drove across town to his job at a furniture repair shop. In the afternoons, he rushed home to help with homework, cook dinner, wash clothes, and settle arguments over whose turn it was to choose a television show. He was always tired. He was also always needed. Dating had felt impossible. There was no extra money for restaurants or babysitters. There was no emotional space for another person. Most of all, Daniel feared that caring about someone new might make his children feel that he was replacing their mother. His older sister, Rachel, had finally created a dating profile for him. "You are 37, she had told him. "You are allowed to be more than a tired father carrying grocery bags." Daniel had disagreed, but Rachel had already arranged the blind date. Claire's life had also changed suddenly 3 years earlier. She had been injured when another driver ran a red light and hit her car. The damage to her spine left her unable to walk. Before the accident, Claire had worked as a music teacher at an elementary school. She had loved hiking, dancing at weddings, and visiting old bookstores with narrow staircases. After the accident, everything became harder. Doors were too heavy, sidewalks were broken, elevators stopped working. Strangers spoke to whoever stood beside her, instead of speaking directly to her. Some people treated her like an inspiration. Others treated her like a burden. Neither felt like respect. She had tried dating twice since the accident. One man had seen her wheelchair through the restaurant window and never entered. Another had spent the whole evening asking about her medical history as if he were interviewing a patient. So Claire had left the wheelchair out of her dating profile. She knew it was risky, but she wanted someone to see her face and read her words before seeing the chair. Now, seated across from Daniel, she waited for his questions. They did not come. Instead, Daniel asked, "So Rachel says you teach music?" "I used to teach full-time," Claire replied. "Now I teach private lessons at home." "What instruments?" "Piano and violin." Daniel leaned back. "My children would think that makes you a magician." Claire smiled. "Do they play?" "Noah thinks hitting the kitchen table with 2 spoons counts as music." "It can," Claire said, "depending on your patience." Daniel laughed. The conversation became easier after that. They talked about bad coffee, old movies, school lunches, and the strange things children said when they were tired. Daniel told her how Sophie once packed 3 library books and a lamp for a one-night sleepover. Claire told him about a 6-year-old student who had played the same wrong note for 20 minutes and then proudly said, "I think the piano is broken." For 90 minutes, Daniel forgot to check the time. Then his phone rang. It was Sophie. Daniel answered immediately. "Dad," she whispered. Noah threw up. Daniel stood so quickly that his knee hit the table. "Is Aunt Rachel there?" "She's in the bathroom with him. I'm coming home." He ended the call and looked at Claire. "I'm sorry. My son is sick." Claire nodded. "Go." Daniel reached for his wallet. The waiter had already placed a bill on the table. Daniel paid, then looked toward the cafe entrance. The wooden door was heavy, and the small step outside was difficult to cross. "I'll help you out first," he said. Claire's expression changed slightly. "I can manage." "I believe you," Daniel replied. "But the door is badly designed and I'm already standing." He did not touch her chair. He simply held the door, moved a planter blocking the path, and asked whether she wanted help over the small step. Claire looked at him for a moment. "Yes," she said quietly. "Just hold the front steady." He followed her instructions exactly. Outside, they stopped beneath the warm light of a street lamp. Daniel looked toward the parking lot. "Do you have a ride?" "My friend is picking me up." Daniel nodded. "Good." He turned to leave, then paused. "I had a nice time tonight." Claire searched his face for pity. There was none, even with the surprise. She asked. Daniel glanced at the wheelchair. The chair is part of your life, he said. It isn't the whole story. Then he hurried toward his car. Claire remained under the street. Watching him leave, that one sentence stayed with her all night. At Daniel's house, the evening was less peaceful. Noah had a fever. Sophie was frightened. Rachel had to leave for an early work shift the next morning, so Daniel sat beside his son's bed until nearly 3 o'clock the next day. He missed work. His boss was understanding, but Daniel had already used most of his paid leave. Missing another day meant losing money he needed for rent and groceries while Noah slept. Sophie found Daniel sitting at the kitchen table with bills spread in front of him. "Are we poor?" she asked. Daniel quickly covered the papers. "No," she looked unconvinced. "We're careful," he said. "That's different." Sophie sat beside him. "Did you like the lady?" Daniel looked at her. "What lady?" "Aunt Rachel said you were meeting someone." Daniel sighed. "Yes. Her name is Claire. Is she nice?" "She is. Will you see her again?" Daniel did not answer immediately. He wanted to. That was the problem. His life was already full of responsibility, worry, and loss. Claire had her own challenges. He wondered whether two complicated lives could fit together without making everything harder. That afternoon, Claire sent him a message. "I hope Noah feels better. Thank you for last night." Daniel read it 3 times. Then he typed, "He's doing better. I would like to see you again." Before he could send it, Noah called from the bedroom. Daniel placed the phone down and went to his son. When he returned 20 minutes later, he looked at the unsent message. His finger hovered over the screen, then fear won. He erased it. 3 days passed before Daniel replied. He sent a safe, careful message. "Noah is feeling better. Thank you for asking." Claire read it and understood what was missing. There was no invitation, no mention of seeing her again. She told herself she had expected it, but disappointment still settled heavily in her chest. Daniel tried to return to his normal routine. He repaired a broken dining table at work, picked up the children from school, and cooked pasta for dinner. Yet he kept thinking about Claire. He remembered her laugh. He remembered how she listened without trying to fix him. Most of all, he remembered that she had not looked uncomfortable when he mentioned Emma. Many people changed the subject when he spoke about his late wife. Claire had simply said, she must have been deeply loved. On Friday evening, Rachel came to the house with groceries. "You didn't ask Claire out again?" she said. Daniel opened the refrigerator. "She told you." "She didn't have to. She told our mutual friend the date was pleasant, but you probably weren't interested." Daniel put the milk away. "It's complicated." Rachel folded her arms. "Because she uses a wheelchair." "No, then why?" Daniel lowered his voice so the children would not hear. "Because I barely manage the life I have. What if I bring someone into it and fail her too?" Rachel's face softened. "You didn't fail Emma. I couldn't save her." "That is not the same thing." Daniel looked away. Rachel stepped closer. "You are afraid of loving someone because love did not protect you from loss. But avoiding love is not protection either." That night, Daniel sent Claire another message. "Would you like to meet again? This time somewhere with better coffee and no badly designed entrance." Claire stared at the screen and smiled. Their second date took place in a public park near the river. Daniel brought sandwiches. Claire brought homemade cookies. They sat at an accessible picnic table beneath a large tree while children played nearby. This time, Daniel asked about the accident, but he did not ask how it happened. He asked, "What was the hardest part afterward?" Claire thought carefully. "People making decisions for me," she said. "Doctors, family, strangers. Everyone wanted to help, but sometimes help becomes control." Daniel nodded. "I understand that in a different way. After Emma died, people told me what the children needed. They meant well, but no one asked what I needed." "What did you need?" Daniel watched the river. "Someone to say I was allowed to be tired." Claire reached across the table and placed her hand near his, not touching it. "You're allowed to be tired." Daniel looked at her. Something inside him finally relaxed. Over the next 2 months, they began seeing each other regularly. At first, Daniel kept the relationship separate from the children. He met Claire for coffee during lunch breaks or visited her home after Rachel agreed to watch Sophie and Noah. But hiding the relationship created new problems. Sophie noticed every change. One evening, she stood in Daniel's bedroom doorway while he changed shirts for the 3rd time. "Are you going to see Claire?" Daniel froze. "How do you know her name?" "You smiled when you read her message." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. "Yes, I'm going to see her." Sophie's face became serious. "Are you going to marry her?" "No." "Do you love her?" Daniel felt his chest tighten. "I care about her." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "More than Mom." Daniel immediately knelt in front of her. "No one will ever replace your mother, but if Claire comes, Mom will be gone more." Daniel pulled his daughter into his arms. "Mom is not held in our house by empty chairs," he whispered. "She is part of us. Loving someone new does not erase her." Sophie cried against his shoulder. Daniel nearly cancelled the date, but instead, he called Claire and explained what had happened. "I think I should give Sophie more time," he said. Claire was silent for a moment. "You should," she replied. "But Daniel, giving her time is different from disappearing." He understood what she meant. He had been moving forward and backward, offering hope and then retreating whenever he felt afraid. A week later, Daniel introduced Claire to the children. They met at a small science museum where the wide halls and ramps made movement easy. Noah accepted Claire immediately. He asked if her wheelchair could go faster than his bicycle. Claire smiled. Only downhill, and that would be a terrible idea. Sophie remained polite but distant. During lunch, Claire did not force conversation. She simply listened while Sophie talked about a school art project. Then Claire noticed the girl tapping her fingers in a careful rhythm on the table. That sounds like the beginning of a song, Claire said. Sophie stopped. Not it could be. Claire tapped a second rhythm in reply. Sophie tried another suit. They were creating a quiet pattern across the table. Daniel watched them and felt hope rise inside him, but life did not become easy. Claire's wheelchair could not fit properly through the narrow hallway in Daniel's small rented house. The front entrance had 3 steep steps. The bathroom door was too narrow. When Claire visited, Daniel carried a portable ramp from the garage. It was heavy and difficult to position. Once it slipped slightly as she rolled upward. Claire stopped immediately. "This isn't safe," she said. Daniel tried to adjust it. "I can fix it." "Daniel, stop." He stepped back, embarrassed and angry with himself. The children were watching from the doorway. Claire turned her chair around. "I should go home. I said I can fix it. I said it isn't safe." Daniel's frustration broke through on trying. Claire looked at him calmly. "I know, but sometimes you act like trying harder can solve everything." The words hurt because they were true. Daniel had spent years believing that if he worked harder, slept less, and worried more, he could protect everyone. That evening, Claire left without entering the house. Daniel did not call her. 2 days later, his boss told him that the repair shop was losing business. Daniel's working hours would be reduced the same week. Sophie got into an argument at school after another student said Daniel was replacing her mother. She came home angry and refused to speak to him. Then Noah asked whether Claire would become his new mother. Daniel felt the fragile parts of his life pulling in different directions. He called Claire, asked to meet. They chose the cafe where they had first met. Daniel arrived early. He removed the chair across from him, just as he had done on their first date. But this time, Claire did not smile when she entered. She rolled to the table and looked at him. Daniel took a deep breath. "I don't think I can do this." Claire's face went still. He continued before losing courage. "My children are struggling. My work hours were cut. My house is not accessible, and I keep making promises I don't know how to keep." Claire's eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. "Are you ending this because life is difficult, or because you don't want me?" Daniel could not answer. Claire nodded slowly. "That is what I thought." She turned her chair away from the table. Daniel stood. Claire, "Wait." She stopped but did not face him. "I never asked you to carry me," she said. "I only asked you to walk beside me." Daniel looked at the empty space where the chair had been on their first date. Removing it had been an act of welcome. Now, the empty place looked like every fear he had allowed to control him. Claire wiped her eyes. "I thought you saw me," she whispered, "but maybe you only saw another person you might fail." Then she rolled toward the door. Daniel wanted to follow her. Instead, he stood frozen beside the empty table as she left alone. For the next 2 weeks, Daniel tried to convince himself he had made the responsible choice. He focused on the children. He accepted small repair jobs from neighbors to replace the lost income. He stopped checking Claire's messages because there were none. But the house felt different. Noah asked why. Claire no longer visited. Daniel said, "We decided not to see each other." Noah frowned. "Did she do something bad?" "No, did you?" Daniel looked at his 7-year-old son. "I was afraid." Noah thought about this. "You always tell me. Being scared doesn't mean I should." The words landed harder than any adult advice. Later that evening, Sophie entered the garage while Daniel repaired a chair for a customer. "I was mean about Claire," she said quietly. Daniel put down his tool. "You were confused. I thought if she came here, Mom would disappear." Daniel waited. "But Mom is still in my memories," Sophie continued. "And Claire never told me to stop talking about her." "No, she didn't." Sophie looked at the half-repaired chair. "Do you miss Claire?" "Yes." "Then why don't you fix it?" Daniel sighed. "People are harder to repair than furniture." Sophie sat on a wooden box. "Maybe don't repair her. Just say sorry." That night, Daniel finally understood the choice in front of him. The problem had never been Claire's wheelchair, his house, his children, or his job. Those were real difficulties, but they were not the reason he had pushed her away. He had ended the relationship before life could end it. For him, he had chosen pain he could control over hope he could not. The next morning, Daniel called the community housing office and asked about accessibility grants. He learned that the landlord could approve a permanent ramp, partly funded by a local program. He spoke to the landlord, filled out forms, and offered to provide the labor himself. Then he spoke to Sophie and Noah. "I want Claire in our lives," he said, "but I need to know how you feel." Sophie looked nervous. "Will you forget Mom? Never. Can we still talk about her?" "Always." Noah raised his hand as though he were in class. Can Claire teach me piano? Daniel smiled for the first time in days. You'll have to ask her. But first, Claire had to be willing to speak to him. Daniel went to her house that afternoon. He carried no flowers and no dramatic gift. He only carried a folded sheet of paper. Claire opened the door but did not invite him inside. What are you doing here? She asked. I came to apologize. She waited. Daniel looked directly at her. I told myself I was protecting my children and being realistic. The truth is, I was protecting myself. Claire's expression softened slightly, but she remained guarded. I was afraid that if I loved you, something would happen and I would lose you, so I hurt you before life had the chance. Claire looked down. Daniel continued. You were right. You never asked me to carry you. I decided everything had to be my responsibility, and when I couldn't control it, I ran. He handed her the folded paper. Claire opened it. It was a rough drawing of a wheelchair ramp with measurements, cost estimates, and notes from the housing office. I'm not showing you this to prove I can fix everything, Daniel said. I'm showing you because I finally understand that practical problems can be worked through. Fear has to be faced. Claire studied the drawing. Are you doing this because you feel guilty? No, because your children miss me. They do, but I am here because I miss you. Her eyes filled with tears. Daniel's voice shook. I love you, Claire. She looked at him for a long time. You hurt me. I know. I need time. I understand. And if we try again, you cannot make decisions for me because you think you are protecting me. I won't. You have to talk to me, even when the conversation is hard. I will. Claire wiped a tear from her cheek. Those are promises. Daniel nodded. Then I'll prove them slowly. Claire did not forgive with him that day, but she agreed to coffee the following week. They started again with honesty instead of excitement. Daniel told Claire about the bills and his fear of losing work. Claire told him how exhausting it felt to enter spaces that were not built for her. Sophie joined one of Claire's piano lessons. Noah learned that banging on keys was not the same as playing music. The permanent ramp was completed 2 months later. Daniel built it with help from 2 neighbors and Claire's brother. Claire chose the angle and height herself. When it was finished, Daniel did not stand beside it proudly waiting for praise. He simply asked, would you like to test it? Claire rolled forward. The ramp held firm beneath her wheels. At the doorway, Sophie had taped a handwritten sign to the wall. Claire. Claire covered her mouth. Noah ran outside. Your chair fits now. Claire laughed through her tears. Yes, it does. Inside, the hallway remained narrow, but Daniel rearranged the furniture. The landlord widened the bathroom doorway with help from the grant. Small changes made the house easier for everyone. Claire never became a replacement for Emma. She became Claire. She listened when Sophie talked about missing her mother. She helped Noah prepare a simple song for a school performance. She encouraged Daniel to rest without feeling guilty. And Daniel did not rescue Claire. He learned to ask before helping. He listened when she said no. He stood beside her when strangers ignored her or when buildings made access difficult. But he did not treat her strength as something he owned. 1 year after their first date, Daniel took Claire back to the same cafe. The entrance had been renovated. The step was gone, and an automatic door had been installed after Claire had written to the owner about accessibility. They sat at the same table. Daniel looked at the chair across from him. Claire noticed. You going to move it again? She asked. Daniel smiled. No, I think we've made enough space. Then Sophie and Noah entered with Rachel, carrying a small cake. On top of it were 4 words written in uneven icing. Thank you for staying. Claire looked at Daniel. He reached across the table and held her hand. Their lives had not become perfect. Daniel still worried about money. Claire still faced barriers. The children still missed their mother. There were difficult days, arguments, tired evenings, and plans that had to change. But they no longer believed that love required a perfect life. It required truth. It required patience. And sometimes, it began with a simple gesture that said, there is space for you here.